I'm sure he's not racist.
Hey, it's your boy Drew.
I want to tell you a story from a few days ago. So my friend and I went to a gay club here in South Florida. This club is a predominantly Latin and Black club. And on this night, the host of the show was a Black drag queen. I promise all of the details will become relevant in a moment. So also on this night, they intend to do some sort of dance contest for $200 or something. Anyway, so there were like 10 people, men and women, lined up on the stage to dance for prize money. The third contestant was the one of interest. Imagine a 5'6" or 5'7"-ish Machine Gun Kelly type of guy. Body, very fit, very defined. Cowboy hat wearing, blondish, tattooed up. Then he takes off his shirt and starts twirling it around in true Coyote Ugly fashion. Crowd goes wild. But that all gets silenced for me as it appears no one else has noticed the belt that he is wearing. It's a big old Confederate flag belt. To which I turn to my friend and ask, is he wearing a Confederate flag belt? And my friend says, yes. Let's ask him about it when this is over. So remember, a predominantly Latin and Black gay club, Black drag queen host, full club, and he makes it to the top 3. Let that sink in. Either the crowd doesn't know what the belt is or understand what the belt means. I lean over to a Black guy that's next to me and I ask him, is the cowboy wearing a Confederate flag belt? To which he said, yes. So at that moment, I know I wasn't just in a drunken blur seeing things. Other people see this too. Okay, so afterwards we go over to talk to him and I ask him, where is he from? Stuart, Florida, which is 40 miles north of West Palm Beach, born and raised. I asked if he was straight and he said yes. I then asked, are you wearing a Confederate flag belt? To which he replies, yes, and the Confederate flag has nothing to do with racism. I swear. And I said, is that so? He said, yes, it has nothing to do with racism. And I'm amazed. And then he said, I can tell you're a respectable, kind Black man who I can talk to about this. He then got called away by his friend, and I was just floored and in disbelief at the spectacle of this all. I'm sure he's not racist, and since I'm a respectable Black man, I can say that. But what would lead someone to have the audacity to believe that it was okay to wear a Confederate flag belt at a predominantly Latin and Black gay club with a Black drag queen host and wear it and swear that it was not racist? How did we get here? What kind of indoctrination led to this moment? Enter the Daughters of the Confederacy. Now, before I talk about the Daughters of the Confederacy, I want to mention that the Southern states explicitly wrote in the infamous secession papers, which were papers written at the time of the withdrawal from the Union, their right to own slaves is the primary reason for their secession, not states' rights or money or northern overreach. But you know what? Don't take my word for it. Google it for yourself. The United Daughters of the Confederacy was a group of women who were descendants of Confederate soldiers and were dedicated to preserving the memory of the Confederacy as heritage and pride versus slavery. Remember, in my previous videos, we discussed the reasons some of the Confederate states like Texas and Mississippi flew the flag. So why do I believe they were so instrumental in perpetuating the notion that the Confederate flag is about heritage and pride versus something else? Well, if you check out their website, it states their goals as honoring those who served and fell in service of the Confederate States, to protect, preserve, and mark places made historic by Confederate valor, amongst other things. In 1914, historian of the United Daughters of the Confederacy Mississippi chapter, Laura Martin Rose, published The Ku Klux Klan, or Invisible Empire, a love letter to the original Klan for its handiwork in the field of domestic terror in the years following the Civil War, when Blacks achieved a modicum of political power. So that's about heritage, right? Annie Cooper Burton, then president of the Los Angeles chapter of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, published a book in 1916 called The Ku Klux Klan. It argues that the Klan has gotten a bad rap. I mean, just because they terrorized black people, assaulted and raped black women, murdered black citizens, and burned down black townships doesn't mean the Klan doesn't deserve reverence from them. You know, heritage. The United Daughters of the Confederacy got real busy during the 1910s and 1920s, where they erected hundreds of Confederate monuments, almost like an homage to the racial terror of Jim Crow. The Jim Crow laws were state and local laws enforcing racial segregation in the United States. Somehow this was not good enough to convey their message of white power, nor the reassertion of the threat of white violence. So in 1926, the United Daughters of the Confederacy put up a monument to the KKK because that conveys pride and heritage, not slavery. Oh no. Historian Karen Cox, author of 2003's Dixie's Daughters, said that the UDC's biggest goal was to indoctrinate white Southern children in the lost cause, a methodology that the Confederate States during the Civil War was just heroic and not centered on slavery. They got schools renamed for famous Confederates. They were massively influential in the selection of school textbooks, library books, and history curriculum throughout the South. They produced a 23-page pamphlet called A Measuring Rod to test textbooks and reference books in schools, colleges, and libraries. This pamphlet demands on page 5, reject a book that says the South fought to hold her slaves. It elaborates in other pages with subheadings like the North was responsible for the war between the states, or the war between the states was not fought to hold the slaves, and slaves were not ill-treated in the South. Now that's heritage, y'all. Anyway, they distributed this pamphlet widely, and for decades, the UDC lobbied relentlessly and successfully across the southern United States, filling schools with textbooks that avoided or outright altered the truth of why the Civil War was fought. I'd like to read an excerpt from a textbook used in North Carolina called Young People's History of North Carolina, a curriculum taught from 1911 into the 1940s. Quote, as a rule, the slaves were comfortably clothed, given an abundance of wholesome food, and kindly treated. Now we know for damn sure that that's not true, child. Occasionally, some hard-hearted master or bad-tempered mistress made the lot of their slaves a hard one, but such cases were not common, child. Cruel masters and cruel mistresses were scorned then, just as men and women who treat animals cruelly are scorned now. Oh, were they now? Okay. And I love the juxtaposition of slaves and treatments of animals. Just picture perfect. These slaves were brought into the colonies fresh from a savage life in Africa, and in 2 or 3 generations were changed into respectable men and women. Lies. This fact shows better than any words can how prudently and how wisely they were managed. Wow, such delusion. Drew, did the Daughters of the Confederacy ever honor black people? Yes. As a matter of fact, they did. On the rare cases the UDC honored black people with statues and monuments, it was in the form of loyal slave markers, an actual subgenre of Confederate monuments which perpetuate the image of happy slaves and benevolent white enslavers. Remember, pride, heritage, not slavery. Why is this important? Well, today, so many people think that the Civil War was fought over some abstract reason like states' rights and not slavery. Therefore, flying the Confederate flag has valor. They think that slavery was benevolent and peaceful, and the Ku Klux Klan was reasonable and one to hold in high esteem. You know, according to FacingSouth.org, between 1889 and 1969, the heights of the Jim Crow era, some 70 million were taught the narratives heavily influenced by the Daughters of the Confederacy. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is how we got here. That's why someone can audaciously and ostensibly wear a Confederate flag belt about slavery and racial terror towards black people on their waist with the notion of pride and gusto and think it's not racist and that they are not racist, which I'm sure they are not, because I am a respectable, kind black man who can have this conversation. So next time you think that the Confederate flag is just about pride and heritage, maybe consider this video, American history. Don't you want to learn about it?